In these challenging times, it's important to talk about choices. One way of doing so is to support organizations that bring vital issues and the people who are thinking about them to you. To keep these voices alive, won't you please consider making a donation to the Carnegie Council's annual fund? Your donation will directly support programs such as the video you are about to watch. It's easy. Visit carnegiecouncil.org and click on the button marked Support. You'll be glad you did. Thank you.
I wonder if you would address the withdrawal of the American military bases in Saudi Arabia and what the real story was there. It seems to me that when Osama bin Laden listed his demands, his number one demand was the departure of American bases from his homeland.
Yes.
I think Israel was number 4 or something of his demands. And very soon after 9/11, the American bases left.
Yes, very good point. It goes back to the geography. I mean, all the Americans were up here in the east, but because of the way Saudi Arabia was pulled together, it was possible for Osama bin Laden to say they are in the Holy Land. Sort of talk, I mean, obviously troublemaking, as if they were in Mecca and Medina. The Americans and the Saudis were very careful to keep them that side. This, to continue the story briefly, is where you exactly hit on the point, where Osama bin Laden separated from the house of Saud. He came back, 88, 89, a conquering hero for the royal family and for everybody. Then Saddam Hussein, and this is another interesting story, having been supported to the tune of tens of billions of dollars in his fight with Iran, turns on Kuwait and, by implication, Saudi Arabia as well. What are the Saudis to do about it? And the decision, as we know, was taken to invite American troops in. Osama bin Laden had a better idea, and he actually went and told it to my friend Prince Ahmed bin Abdulaziz and to other members of the House of Saud. He said, look, we are specialists in guerrilla fighting. You don't need the Americans to get rid of Saddam Hussein. We got to get them out of Kuwait. So we can infiltrate Kuwait. We'll do it well, and they probably would have done it quite well. And we'll go in there and we will fight house to house, and we will drive the infidel Saddam Hussein. You know, the idea that, that 10 years later that Saddam Hussein and bin Laden were like that, your pretext for war in Iraq is extraordinary. But anyway, we will fight them. We will push them out. And Prince Ahmed said, well, I'll take this and talk to the family. And they said, thank you very much, but no thanks. And he was bitterly offended. He then said to Prince Turki, the intelligence chief, well, there's trouble down in Yemen. I'd like to go down there and deal with that. And Prince Turki said, no, your fighting days are over. This is it. And that is very interesting that I have a number of Saudi friends who fought in Afghanistan, and that was it. I've got a friend who's a marriage guidance counselor now. I mean, he's actually the picture of the person I'm talking to on the flap of the book, Khalid Barhazik. He went to Afghanistan in the 1980s no less than 10 times. Most of them went for their holidays. And they would buy a car, buy a AK, whatever it is, fight for a month or so, and then when they left, they'd give the car and the guns to the guys who remained. Khalid went 10 times, and then that was the end of it, but not for bin Laden. And now, to answer your question, so the Americans stayed. Again, very carefully segregated over the eastern side of the country. And it was sort of a matter of pride for the House of Saud. They weren't going to ask the Americans to leave just because bin Laden was asking it. Then, of course, came 9/11, and it became more serious. It wasn't possible to do it straight away because, reluctantly, there were all sorts of command centers that had been created in Saudi Arabia. I'm not quite sure, I think Hamis Mashaid, but I'm not quite sure exactly where, which were crucial to the Iraq operation. And the Americans asked if, as a favor, everybody could stay till Iraq was invaded. Now, it's a whole other question. Saudis were not at all happy about the invasion of Iraq, but, they regard America as their number one ally in all sorts of ways, not just militarily, but economically. All Saudi economic surpluses go straight into the dollar. If there's one thing, well, I'm not an economic expert, but certainly the vast oil surpluses which the Saudis pour into the dollar every month, they have spare money. is an enormous factor in the stability of the dollar. And never once do they play. Never once, you know, journalists speculate how the Saudis are going to go for the euro, and the Iranians, of course, and other oil producers will talk about that. The Saudis would never dream of, you know, suggesting that they would wobble the dollar. Partly because they've got so many investments in it. And so straight after Iraq was invaded, it took about 5 or 6 months. The Americans all went down to Qatar. It was arranged, and that's now the home of Al Jazeera. Qatar is where the American forces are based.